What is journalism? Figuring out that question is what this whole video is about. Many people I've talked to over the years have had an I know it when I see it approach to journalism. So do you know it when you see it? What do you think of this? Is this journalism? What about this? In the academic literature, it has been said that journalists often have this I know it when I see it attitude, and that the identity of journalism as a profession lives on the assumption of I know it when I see it. In some cases, especially on social media, it's not so much of I know journalism when I see it, but rather people point to a particular article or news broadcast or video or something and say that it's not journalism, usually with the hashtag this is not journalism. With my research here at the Faculty of Law, I'm looking at YouTubers and I'm analysing them to see whether or not they produce journalism. So an I know it when I see it approach is just not good enough. So here is my definition of journalism. Journalism is the editorially independent activity of collecting and interpreting newsworthy information and regularly publishing media content that reports or comments on such information for some portion of the public. Feel free to pause here and leave a comment below on whether or not you agree or disagree with this definition. Maybe you have a better definition and I'd love to see it. So this is the definition of journalism that I came up with. However, I think it's a bit too easy for YouTubers to meet this definition. It's a bit too much of a low bar. So what I wanted to do is also create a high bar for assessing YouTubers. And for that, I came up with a definition of public interest journalism. Now, this definition I'm going to give later in the video. If you want to just skip to that, the timestamps are in the description. But I thought it was worth going through some journalism studies literature a little bit, just to see what has been happening over the past several decades and why I felt I needed to come up with my own definition. So what does the academic literature say about what journalism is? Well, it's actually chaos. Actually, more accurately, it's anarchy. Journalism studies has been described as theoretical anarchy. Journalism studies has no dominant theories, understandings, or definitions. This is despite an enormous body of literature dealing with the values, practices, and impact of journalism. One study analysed journalism studies articles from 2 different journalism-focused journals over more than a 10-year period and found that there are more than 100 different theories guiding the research. Over the past decade or more, digital journalism has emerged as its own field or subfield within journalism studies. And in one big analysis of 140 abstracts from the journal Digital Journalism, researchers found 59 different theories that scholars are trying to use to understand what journalism is. Now, this theoretical richness or anarchy of journalism studies comes because it is an inherently interdisciplinary area of study. Theoretical perspectives come predominantly from sociology and political science, but also from other disciplines such as history, information technology studies, business studies, law, cultural studies, and a whole bunch more. Each theoretical perspective and discipline brings its own assumptions and its own lenses from which it understands or tries to analyse everything, including journalism. To confuse the issue, if it wasn't already confusing, often in the literature, terms like the press, media, journalism, fourth estate, these terms are often used interchangeably to mean the same thing, and very rarely are they defined. In my survey of the literature, I found that less than 30% of papers that are about journalism issues define these journalism-related terms. However, there are some definitions out there, and so let's have a look at some of them. Mitchell Stevens wrote that journalism is the activity of collecting, presenting, interpreting, or commenting upon the news for some portion of the public. This definition, like many of the definition, focuses on activities or a set of activities. Michael Koliska and colleagues give another example of an activity-based journalism definition, though the term they define is journalist, not journalism. In this case, journalists gather, filter, and select information to offer their audiences a sense of orientation in an increasingly complex world. In my opinion, these definitions are too easy for YouTubers to qualify for, so I didn't use them. In his book, Why Democracies Need an Unlovable Press, Michael Schudson said that journalism is the business or practice of regularly producing and disseminating information about contemporary affairs of public interest and importance. This definition is again based on activities, but it introduces an important topic, and that is public interest. Other scholars add different elements into their definitions of journalism. For example, Malik and Shapiro include independence in their definition. Journalism comprises the activities involved in an independent pursuit of or commentary upon accurate information about current or recent events and its original publication for public edification. Some definitions in the literature I decided not to use because I felt that they were too vague to be useful for my purposes, which is analysing YouTubers. For example, in the book Worlds of Journalism, journalism is a discursive social institution that spawns a kaleidoscope of journalistic cultures, which are manifested as products of local, societal, and professional contexts. Other definitions I rejected because they were a little bit too circular. For example, one study wrote that they understood journalism as any form of professional journalism within institutionalized settings, irrespective of journalistic beat and employment type, including freelance journalists. Journalism studies has no consensus on what journalism is, so for me this was a problem because I wanted to look at YouTubers and judge them based on whether they did or did not do journalism. So what I did then is I went to journalism purpose. I asked, what is journalism supposed to do? What is the purpose of journalism? And I found the answer to this question in political science perspectives in journalism studies. Here I found that journalism is supposed to be an institution that operates in defense of democracy. It's supposed to sustain democracy. Normative conceptualizations of journalism say that it's supposed to support or defend democracy by performing several functions. Now, these functions, the number of these functions, the exact articulation of these functions are not agreed upon or widely agreed upon in the literature. However, there are three enduring functions or roles that are generally accepted by scholars. And I call these the core democratic functions of journalism. There are three of them. The first one is informing the public about public interest issues. The second one is facilitating public sphere deliberation. And the third is holding power to account. So watchdog journalism, that kind of thing. I based my definition of public interest journalism on these three core democratic functions. And I ended up with this definition. Public interest journalism is the editorially independent activity guided by ethical considerations of collecting and interpreting verifiable information on public interest issues and regularly publishing media content that investigates, reports on, or analyses accurate information for some portion of the public so that the public may better engage in political decision-making or public sphere deliberation. Let me know in the comments if you think that definition is too long. So the previous definition of journalism was the low bar that I used to assess YouTubers. This definition of public interest journalism is the high bar. And If a YouTuber meets this definition of public interest journalism, then it can be quite uncontroversial to say that they produce journalism. So what do you think? Do you have any thoughts on my definition, or journalism studies in general, or journalism in general? Maybe everyone's got an opinion about journalism and journalists. Leave a comment below. If you want to read up more about this topic and get into the literature a little bit, check out the description. I've included a list of all of the academic articles, all of the literature that I've used to make this video. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe. If you know anybody who's interested in journalism or has any opinion about journalism, please share the video. Cheers.